Today, I want to talk about something that might surprise you. Why retirement boredom can actually be a gift. Because what we often call boredom may really be something else. It may be room to breathe. If you're new here, I'm Melody. On this channel, I talk about retirement, not just the financial side, but how to actually live this phase of life in a peaceful and meaningful way. Let me say this right up front, just to put your mind at ease. Yes, you will probably feel bored sometimes in retirement. And no, that is not a problem. In fact, it can be something really good. Years ago, long before I retired, I remember having a quiet moment where a simple thought crossed my mind. I'm bored. And almost immediately, another thought followed. This is wonderful. That moment, it stayed with me ever since. At the time, I had just come through a very difficult period in my life. There was pressure coming at me from all directions. It felt like everything needed my attention. Everything was urgent, and everything carried a weight. I was constantly moving from one thing to the next, trying to keep up, trying to manage it all. There was very little space, very little time to pause, to think, or to simply be. And then my circumstances changed. The pressure started to ease. The constant sense of urgency, it went away. My days became more open and more manageable. For the first time in a long time, I could slow down. I could enjoy small moments again. I could sit quietly without feeling like I should be somewhere else or doing something more important or dealing with yet another emergency. I even had time to myself, and that felt unfamiliar at first. And in one of those quiet moments, that thought appeared. I'm bored. But instead of feeling restless or uncomfortable, it felt peaceful. It felt like a release from that incredibly stressful period of my life. That is when I realized something that has stayed with me ever since. Boredom, it's not a sign of trouble. It's often a sign that things are finally going right. It means the pressure has lifted. It means you have space again. It means your life is no longer driven by urgency, but by choice. And that is a very different place to be. Many people worry about being bored in retirement, but I think that we should look at it differently. You are safe. You are not under pressure. There is no urgency. There is space. And for most of our adult lives, space like that was actually very rare. For years, our lives were shaped by responsibilities. There were schedules to keep, people depending on us, deadlines to meet, and a constant sense that something needed our attention. Lunches were spent working at our desks. Vacation time was punctuated by checking email and making sure everything was going well at the office. We became very accustomed to that pace, and we learned to live inside of it. But when that pressure lifts, it can feel unfamiliar. The quiet can feel a little strange at first. Without the usual demands, your mind may go looking for something to do, something to solve, something to fill the space. That is often when we label the feeling as boredom. But what if that feeling is not a problem to fix? What if it is simply your nervous system adjusting to a different way of living? A slower rhythm, a gentler pace, a life where you are no longer being pulled in multiple directions. That space you are feeling, it's not emptiness. It is openness. It is the absence of pressure. It's the presence of possibility. And when you begin to see it that way, the experience changes. Instead of trying to escape it, you can begin to settle into it. You can allow it. You can even begin to appreciate it. Because that space is when your life becomes your own again. In that space, something begins to happen. At first, it's easy to miss. It does not arrive with any kind of announcement. It is quiet, but if you give it a little time, you begin to notice it. You start to notice the gentle movements of life, the light coming through a window in the morning, the way it shifts throughout the day, the softness of it in the early morning hours, and the warmth as the day unfolds. You notice the sound of birds outside, not just as background noise, but as something you are actually hearing, something you can pause and listen to. You notice what it feels like to sit in a comfortable chair with nothing pressing on your mind, no place you need to be, no task waiting for you, just a quiet moment that belongs entirely to you. These are very small things, but they're not insignificant. There is something deeply restorative about honoring those quiet moments, about allowing them to exist without rushing past them, about letting yourself settle into them, even if it feels unfamiliar at first. Over time, you may begin to rediscover a kind of childlike joy in these simple experiences. A walk outside, it becomes something to enjoy, not something to get through. You notice the air, the movement, the small details along the way. A garden, it becomes more than just plants. It becomes color, texture, growth, and change. Something living that you can observe and appreciate. You begin to notice the rhythm of the seasons, the gradual shifts that happen around you, the way that nature moves at its own pace, without urgency, without pressure. And there is something very calming about that. Nature has a quiet way of restoring us. It does not ask anything from us. It does not rush us. It simply invites us to slow down and be present with it. If we are willing to let it, it can gently bring us back to ourselves. Sometimes the most healing thing you can do is rest. Real rest. The kind that is not rushed, not scheduled tightly between other obligations, not something you feel you have to earn. Take an afternoon nap. Sit quietly with a cup of tea. Allow yourself to slow down without feeling like you should be doing something more productive. For many of us, especially those who are early in our retirement journey, we are more tired than we realize. We've spent decades working hard, managing responsibilities, solving problems, carrying pressure day after day after day. Even when we enjoyed our work, it still required a great deal from us, mentally, emotionally, and sometimes physically. We become very good at pushing through, at staying busy, at continuing forward even when we are running low on energy. And when retirement comes, and for the first time in a long time, that constant demand begins to lift, at first, it can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. But underneath that, there is often something else happening. Your body is starting to rest. Your mind is starting to slow down, and your system is beginning to recover from years of being on. For me, this connects very closely to mental health. I've dealt with severe anxiety, and I learned over time that it was always worse when I had too much pressure and too little time, when everything felt urgent and when there was no space to step back. My mind had no opportunity to settle. What helped me was not adding more structure or more activity. It was doing less. Simple, peaceful time. Time to breathe. Space to think. Space to just be. That kind of time, it allowed my nervous system to calm down. It gave me the room to process, to recover, and to feel like myself again. And that is something I think is especially important in retirement. This is not just a time to stay busy in new ways. It's also a time to heal from doing too much for far too long, to restore your energy, to reconnect with who you are when you're not under constant pressure. That feeling that we sometimes call boredom is often a part of the process. It is your body and your mind adjusting to a different pace, a healthier pace. And when you allow yourself to rest in that space, something important happens. You begin to feel whole again. So when you find yourself slowing down, resting more, or simply sitting quietly, try not to see that as wasted time, but as something valuable. Because that does not feel like boredom. It feels like restoration. As time goes on, when you allow those still moments, they begin to bloom into something else. It may start small, a small sense of curiosity, a thought that returns a few times, an idea that quietly catches your attention. You may find yourself wondering about things you have not thought about in years, things you once enjoyed, things you have never had time to explore. From that curiosity, creativity often begins to emerge, not in a pressured way, and not with any expectation, just a natural pull towards something that interests you. This is where hobbies come in, not as another item on a list, and not as something you have to be good at, but as something you are drawn towards because it feels engaging or enjoyable or simply different from your past routines. At the same time, this phase of life gently invites connection. You may begin to notice places where you feel comfortable just being around others, what people sometimes call third places. One of my favorites is a local coffee shop. I sometimes stop there when I'm running a few errands. I have a latte and I sit near the window and watch the world go by. The last time I was there, I had a delightful chat with another retired woman about baking and grandchildren, and a nice man stopped by and shared a couple of silly dad jokes. Those places can become part of the rhythm of your life. And of course, there is family. I really believe that love is spelled T-I-M-E. Retirement gives you more of that, more opportunity to be present, to listen, to share experiences, and create small moments that matter. You can be the person who shows up with energy and warmth, the one who takes the time to connect. And beyond family, there's also the opportunity to build community, friendships, both new and old, connections with people who share your interests or simply enjoy a similar pace of life. Those relationships do not need to happen quickly. They can grow naturally over time. And in many ways, they become one of the most important and meaningful parts in this stage of life. So if you find yourself thinking, I don't know what to do, maybe you don't need to do anything. Maybe this is just a quiet moment and you can honor it, because often those moments lead to something meaningful. Retirement isn't about filling every hour. It's about creating a life that feels peaceful, intentional, and truly your own. And sometimes what we call boredom is actually the beginning of something very good. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And I have a couple of questions for you. Have you experienced boredom in retirement? And has it turned into something wonderful for you? And what does a peaceful day look like in your life right now? Thank you for spending this time with me, and I'll see you in the next video.